Okay, so this is the introductory video for the Su-85. You can see I've got a painted and an unpainted version over here, so you can kind of see what things are made of with the unpainted version and what it'll look like before you put paint on it. And then my painted version, I just used brushes and dollar store paints to do this, and I'm more of a infantry miniatures sort of guy, so you can probably get a lot better painting advice and stuff from the internet than you can from me. But there is a bit of a painting guidelines video. Anyways, here are some examples of what the Su-85 looks like when you're done. And on this side, and including the matchstick, are the parts that it requires to make. And over here are the tools that you need to make it. So I'll just go through each category fairly quickly. This is cereal box cardboard. You're going to want to scuff up or sand the glossy side a bit before using it. But generally you'll need about this much of a cereal box to make a vehicle. So you can probably easily get two out of one piece of one side of a cereal box. You're going to need some tracing paper and some cue card or index card or just like slightly heavy gauge paper. And you're going to need some drywall fiber tape, about 21 millimeters long and the full width of a piece. And starting from over here, this is a wooden matchstick. It's just a little bit larger than an average bamboo barbecue skewer. There are thicker wooden matches available. I don't recommend them at all. They're pretty much unusable. But these smaller ones are better. You're going to need a bamboo skewer, 6 flat toothpicks, and 1 round toothpick. This is a bit of Christmas ribbon. You can see it's got a little bit of the Christmas decorations on here. You want to avoid the Christmas ribbon. Now it's mesh ribbon, so that's the important part, that it's mesh. You want to avoid the decorations if you can. I got this clearance for very cheap, so I'll just cut the decorations off and use the clear part. You don't need very much. 2 centimeters by 1 centimeter square is enough for each vehicle. There's a couple of choices that you're going to have to make as to how you want to do the suspension. You can either use 20 11 millimeter buttons. 12 is actually closer to the size that you would want, but 11 millimeters are the common, easily available in bulk, all the same size buttons that I've found, and they work just fine. This painted version is done with the 11 millimeter buttons. This one is done with rocket candies. You're going to need 10 rocket candies, but it actually takes about 15 to get 10 good ones. So you'll probably consume a whole pack making one vehicle. And it's an either or, one or the other. There's one other part that is an either or sort of thing, so I'll go through that now. It's the headlight. This headlight here is made with with a gem sticker. But traditionally, I've always used 2.5 millimeter googly eyes with the pupil removed as my headlights, and they're perfectly acceptable. The gem sticker ones are a little bit easier because you don't have to take it apart to remove the pupil, so there's no risk of cutting yourself, really. And I think they look a little bit more headlighty, so I've been using them now, but I only just discovered them. Google eyes are easier to get, so in a pinch use them. And you're also going to consume one making some of the detailing for the top of the superstructure, so you're going to have Google eyes anyways, but you may not have these. Although, if you can get them, you use them for making the suspension as well. Clear ones are required for the headlight, although you can use colored ones for the suspension. There's also other parts you can use for this. You can cut like plastic infantryman armatures, very thin circles, and use those for that detailing as well. I just like the way these look, so I've been using them recently since I discovered them. You'll need a couple of 8 or 9 millimeter buttons as well, so smaller than the 11 millimeter ones, and smaller than the rockets as well. And you'll need about 7 millimeters, actually 8 millimeters sphere of modeling clay. Some of it is used in the gun, and some of it is used for just bringing the level of this hatch down to the superstructure evenly. It is very hard to do with cardboard, but it's easy to do with modeling clay. So you use a little bit for that, and then the rest for the gun. There's a couple of soft snowflakes here. Now you may not be able to find these exact ones. It's just made for detailing for the rear wheel. So it's kind of optional. If you can't find them, or you can't find snowflake confetti is what it actually is, you can skip that step and just have a sort of a plainer rear wheel is fine too. Now you'll definitely need two 12 millimeter caps, but I actually recommend you have 10. These 4 fuel barrels on the back each require 2, so that's 8 total, and these front wheels take up the 2 extra ones. So if you don't want to do the fuel barrels, which is a little bit of a pain, especially for early modeling experience, you might want to. You only need 2 if you're not doing fuel barrels, but they actually do make them look more like the Su-85 in general, and so I recommend them. You're going to need 4 8-ring caps. There's quite a size difference, so you do need the different kinds of caps. So you need 4 8-ring ones and up to 10 12-ring ones. And the number before the ring is just how many are on a ring. It has nothing else to do with anything really, except it differentiates the size. So 12 of these gems for the suspension, and 1 more for the headlight, if you wish. And I think that covers all the parts. Went through this, went through there. Yeah, okay. So now, getting into the tools, I highly recommend Weldbond glue. I've found it the best for bonding multiple kinds of things to each other and also hardening the model. Like, these are very durable. I find them at least as durable, if not more durable, than plastic models. And also easy to repair because the parts are easy to make, where if a plastic model breaks, it's pretty much broken. So in that way, they're durable and repairable, and I recommend Weldbond glue for almost every bond, except plastic to plastic, which I use crazy glue or super glue. Or modeling glue is actually pretty good too. It takes a little bit longer to bond, but that time can be used to make the bond in the perfect place, where with super glue or crazy glue, you pretty much have to get it in the right place right away, or the bond is no good. You lose the strength. The longer it takes you to fix the piece, it becomes a weaker and weaker and weaker bond. I've got some just dollar store craft paints, acrylic paints. These are $1 a bottle, so very cheap. Black, green, white, and silver. The kind of green, like if it's too bright or the color's too rich, you can just add black and white. A little bit of black, a lot of white, a little bit of black, a lot of white, until you've toned down the green to a more olive color. So it doesn't really matter as much the kind of green, although olive would be a good one to start with. So you'll need basically 4 colors of paint for almost every Russian tank anyways, because they just pretty much went green or green and white for winter. This is a bottle of nail polish. You don't need much. It serves to harden the modeling clay parts a lot better than layers of glue. So I do recommend it. You can use glue, you don't need it, but I do recommend it because it makes it a lot harder than glue and dries a lot faster, so you can move on to other construction projects. You're going to need a 7mm hole punch, and you're going to need it quite a bit. So it's best to own one or have ready access to one, because you're going to want to go back and dip into that pool several times, especially if you're doing more than one vehicle. A ruler. Small is good, especially for the early stages where you're gluing down the template. I really recommend a ruler of this sort, and as small is usable for any step. Any of the measurements you're doing will be at a small scale. So I recommend a small ruler. I got a couple of drill bits here, a 1/16 and a 1/8. You can see there are different styles. If you can find and afford this kind, I recommend it more highly than this style of bit. It's just a lot easier to grip. If you end up having to get one of these straight ones, I would recommend covering the end in tape just to make it a little easier on your fingers. I've got like a thumbtack. This is mostly used for setting a sight to drill in so you don't leave your mark while drilling. There may be a couple other applications for construction. It's not used very much, but it is useful. These are necessary in many, many stages. They're miniature clothespins. You're going to want a couple of packs of them. They're cheap and effective. They do fall apart, but they're inexpensive. Needle nose pliers aren't strictly necessary, but they are useful for a couple of steps. I didn't use them very often, but they are occasionally useful. Good sharp scissors. These are just dollar store scissors, but they work well. They're nice and sharp, and as soon as they dull down, I just replace them. But you're going to want some good heavy-duty scissors and a good heavy-duty X-Acto knife. Again, this is just a dollar store one, but I went and paid the $3 or $4 to get the slightly heavier duty one from there. And it's worth it so the blade doesn't wiggle around on you when you're making your cuts. It's pretty important to not have an annoying one. So, I mean, if you have an Alpha, use that, but dollar store ones can do. Tweezers, always useful for doing the tinier detailing. So you'll want those for sure. Mechanical pencil of some sort. You need to make a couple of marks for small pieces, cutting them out and such. This paintbrush is pretty much used only in the beginning stages, so you'll want like a fairly large paintbrush for applying glue and stuff like that when you're putting down the template. And then this one is used for almost everything. So kind of medium size. But these are all dollar store paintbrushes, these three. And then this one is used for some of the smaller gluing detailed bits, setting them in place and such. And this tiny brush is it's a high quality model painting brush that I use just for tiny finishing detailing with painting. It's not used very much, but it is useful for doing a few bits right at the end. A couple of gauges of sandpaper. Rough, this is 40 grit. Pretty much used for scouring down the buttons so that they glue to paper and other objects easier, and also for scouring off part of the glossy side of your cardboard for any other heavy sanding duties. And this is for like finishing your gun, so it makes it nice and round. There's a few other applications where this is 320 grit. You could go a little bit rougher than this, but this is pretty good, and it gets the job done. It takes a little bit longer, but it's fine. And that's pretty much all you're gonna need in the way of tools and parts. So once you've got this all together, you're ready to proceed. You actually can start with just a little bit of cardboard and tracing paper. It's nice to have this to start with, but you can start the process with this and then pick the rest of the stuff up at the store. I recommend some flat toothpicks to begin with, but you can get through 5 or 6 of the steps with just that stuff and then pick the rest of the stuff up at the store at your leisure. Or the stuff that's hard to find, hopefully you can order from us in future.